Chapter 142, The Competition Invitation. This chapter is updated by novels.pl. The maidservant was shocked. She didn't understand why Commandery Princess Yanchen laughed like it was some kind of joke. In her eyes, the 9th prince was just one of the many princes who wanted to arrange a marriage with the 13th Commandery princess. Countless princes had come to Cayenne's Yui Commandery recently with only one intention. The maidservant no longer found it strange. She had heard that Commandery Princess Yanchen was a superb woman, as cold as frost and looked down upon everyone. How could she be in such a good mood after seeing a prince from an inferior commandery? She was confused and didn't understand. When Huang Yanchen arrived at the top of the tower, she saw that there were two maidservants whose meridians had been blocked, as well as the 13th Commandery Princess Huang Yanren and the 10th Prince Huang Jing. The cultivation of Huang Yanren and Huang Jing were not good enough compared to Zhang Yuochen, and thus they were not able to set the maidservants loose. Bang! Bang! Huang Yanjin released two of her fingers quickly and tapped on the glabella of the two maidservants. Two strands of genuine qi flowed out from her fingertip and shattered the sealed meridians in the maidservant's body. They awoke slowly and recovered. When they opened their eyes, they kneeled down towards Huang Yanjin immediately and said, "Maidservants, greet Commandery Princess Yanchen." Huang Yanchen nodded and walked towards Huang Yanren and Huang Jing with her sapphire hair fluttering. She looked at Huang Jing's wounds and sneered. "Little brother, did you get into trouble again?" Looking at Huang Yanchen, the 10th Prince Huang Jing pounced on her as fast as he could. He fell to his knees and grabbed Huang Yanchen's legs. "Big sister, you're finally back. The 9th Prince of Yunwu Commandery has bullied me. He doesn't have any respect for Cayenne's Yui Commandery and looks down on everybody. Look at all the wounds on my body. It's all because of him. My dear sister, you have to get revenge for me." Huang Yanjin understood Zhang Yuochen well enough to know that he would not beat Huang Jing without a valid reason. At the same time, she also clearly knew the personality of her 10th brother. Although she didn't exactly know what happened, she could briefly guess. "I can't believe my 10th brother has irritated Zhang Yuochen. He must have done something worse enough to trigger him." Huang Yanchen had never seen Zhang Yuochen getting angry that she fairly admired her 10th brother deep in her heart. However, Huang Yanchen put on a displeased look and sneered. Why was the 9th Prince of Yunwu Commandery being so disgraceful? Doesn't he want to arrange a marriage with our sister? The 13th Commandery Princess was annoyed. "Him?" she asked. "He knows nothing about being polite and how to follow the rules here. I would never marry a guy like him. I need to let our father know and imprison him and Yunwu Commandery Prince." Huang Yanchen nodded and smiled strangely. "You're right. He was very impolite and deserves to be taught a lesson. Yet, it'll be pointless locking him up. Since he wanted to marry you, why don't you let him join the sword technique conference the day after tomorrow? You can embarrass and humiliate him at the conference. With your precious status, I'm sure other candidates will be more than happy to take care of him for you if you secretly release the information that he has annoyed you." "Okay, let's do that, sister." Since the 13th Commandery Princess admired Huang Yanchen, she listened to her. Something akin to happiness radiated from Huang Yanchen's eyes. She realized that there was a scabbard on the table and asked, "Is that the gift from the 9th Prince?" The 13th Commandery Princess responded with anger, "Caixia, throw it away, now." "I feel so pissed off looking at it." Huang Yanchen removed the scabbard and looked at the ice jade sword. She held the sword in her hand and transferred genuine qi to it so as to feel the inscriptions carved on the sword. "A 7th class genuine martial arms. Zhang Yuochen is very generous to give out such a valuable gift on a blind date." Huang Yanjin resheathed the jade sword. "It's such a waste throwing it away. This sword works well with my physical quality. If you don't mind, I'll take it." When Zhang Yuochen left the manor, he let out a long sigh and smiled bitterly. "Well, I failed to ask for reinforcement for Cayenne's Yui Commandery." He had meant to make the acquaintance of the 13th Commandery Princess, but instead he had offended her as well as the 10th Prince. Of course, Zhang Yuochen didn't regret doing it. The 13th Commandery Princess and the 10th Prince were both too irrational. Zhang Yuochen accepted the fact that he had offended them. If I'm not mistaken, senior sister apprentice Huang is also one of the princesses of Cayenne's Yue Commandery. Perhaps I can ask her for help if things do not work out in the end. However, unless Zhang Yuochen had no other alternatives, he would never ask Huang Yanshan for help. From his point of view, Huang Yanshan was even more irrational than the 13th Commandery Princess and the 10th Prince. Her emotions fluctuated wildly. At this moment, Zhuo Longlin walked out from the manor and glanced coldly at Zhang Yuochen like he was looking at a dead man. He shook his head and sighed. Such an idiot. You've once again caused trouble for Yunwu Commandery. The 13th Commandery Princess and the 10th Prince will not let you off easily. You'll see. Zhuo Longlin already knew what had happened in the manor, that Zhang Yuochen had offended both the 13th Commandery Princess and the 10th Prince. Zhang Yuochen didn't bother to acknowledge Zhuo Longlin or to even glance at him. Two servants of Minister's mansion, each driving an ancient roan antelope carriage, arrived outside of the manor. They stopped in front of Zhuo Longlin and Zhang Yuochen accordingly. Yunwu Commandery Prince and Fire Dragon Commandery Prince are expecting both of you at Minister's mansion. May I ask both princes to get in the carriages? Please. It took about an hour for Zhang Yuochen to arrive at Minister's mansion. Both Zhang Yuochen and Zhuo Longlin walked through the door at the same time and entered the main hall, led by the elderly butler. Minister Ning sat at the top of the main hall while Fire Dragon Commandery Prince and Yunwu Commandery Prince sat on either side. When Fire Dragon Commandery Prince saw Zhuo Longlin walking into the hall, he quickly asked, Lina, how did things go when you met the 13th Commandery Princess today? Zhuo Longlin laughed. Father, the 13th Commandery Princess is a startlingly beautiful woman who has a pure heart. I admire her very much. The 13th Commandery Princess also looks well upon me and has agreed for me to join the Sword Technique Conference which takes place the day after tomorrow. Fire Dragon Commandery Prince was excited and asked, has the 13th Commandery Princess given you the competition invitation? Competition invitation? What do you mean? Zhuo Longlin looked confused. Fire Dragon Commandery Prince responded, once the 13th Commandery Princess likes a prodigy, he will be given a competition invitation. You will need the competition invitation in order to join the Sword Technique Conference. The 13th Commandery Princess didn't give me any competition invitation, Zhuo Longlin said with disappointment. Minister Ning laughed and said, perhaps the 13th Commandery Princess forgot to hand you the invitation. She'll probably send you one later. Zhuo Longlin also assumed that the princess forgot to give him one. He let out a gentle sigh of relief. Only Zhang Yuochen knew that Zhuo Longlin didn't even get to meet the real 13th Commandery Princess. The reason he knew Zhang Yuochen had offended the 13th Commandery Princess and the 10th Prince was probably because he had been told by one of the maidservants. However, Zhang Yuochen did not mention anything about what Zhuo Longlin had been through back at the manor. If he did, he would embarrass him. Then, Yunwu Commandery Prince looked at Zhang Yuochen and asked thoughtfully, my 9th son, what does the 13th Commandery Princess think about you? Zhuo Longlin sneered before Zhang Yuochen even spoke. Yunwu Commandery Prince, I suggest you take good care of the 9th Prince. Not only did he kill Prince Huoxing and bring Yunwu Commandery massive trouble, but he also offended the 13th Commandery Princess and the 10th Prince. Rumor has it he has beaten the 10th Prince who is now seriously injured. What are you talking about? Yunwu Commandery Prince was shocked. He could not imagine Zhang Yuochen had gotten into further trouble. Cold sweat appeared on his forehead. Even Minister Ning, who always remained calm, frowned his eyebrows. He stared sharply at Zhuo Longlin and murmured, is everything you said real? Zhuo Longlin bowed towards Minister Ning and saluted. He responded, Longlin does not dare to lie in front of the minister. Every word I said is true. I've heard that the 13th Commandery Princess has demanded that the 9th Prince and Yunwu Commandery Prince be locked in the Celestial Prison. Fire Dragon Commandery Prince, who sat aside, released a sarcastic laugh. He lifted up the teacup gently, took a sip and said, Yunwu Commandery Prince, you indeed have an outstanding son. Ha ha. He has no one to blame but himself. Minister Ning stood up suddenly. His gaze was frustrated as he said coldly, Yunwu Commandery Prince, You should accompany the 9th prince to the 13th commandery princess and ask for her forgiveness. If she gets irritated, I can do nothing to help." Yunwu commandery prince stared at Zhang Yuochen and sighed. He clearly knew that Minister Ning had given up on them. It was what it was. Perhaps disaster was meant to happen to Yunwu commandery and no one would be able to save them. Yunwu commandery prince was looking down and felt very disappointed. Just as he stood up and was about to leave, a servant rushed into the hall with a silver invitation in his hand. "Minister, here is the competition invitation sent by the 13th commandery princess." Zhuo Longlin looked surprised and excited. He assumed that it was for him. Yunwu commandery prince's eyes gazed at the silver competition invitation in the servant's hand. He was frustrated. If only the competition invitation was for Sai. "Let's go, son." Yunwu commandery prince led Zhang Yuochen towards the main door. They had just exited the main door when they heard the loud laugh of Minister Ning. "Yunwu commandery prince, come back quickly. This competition invitation is for the 9th prince. The 13th commandery princess hopes that he can attend the sword technique conference held the day after tomorrow." Both Yunwu commandery prince and Zhang Yuochen were completely shocked by the news. When they returned to the hall, Minister Ning put a smile on his face and handed the competition invitation to Zhang Yuochen. He patted his shoulders and said joyfully, "Such a talented young man. No wonder you can win the love of the 13th commandery princess. Of the inferior commanderies, you are the first prince to be given a competition invitation. I guess the 13th commandery princess does look favorably upon you after all." "It's impossible." Zhuo Longlin stared unwaveringly at the competition invitation in Zhang Yuochen's hand and said, "He offended the 13th commandery princess. How can he still receive the competition invitation? The 13th commandery princess must have mixed up our names. The invitation belongs to me." Saying this, Zhuo Longlin walked quickly towards Zhang Yuochen, wanting to snatch the valuable competition invitation. Minister Ning glared coldly at Zhuo Longlin and spoke seriously, "That's enough. How dare you grab the invitation in front of me? Who am I to you?" Zhuo Longlin's face turned pale under Minister Ning's stare. He retreated 3 steps back and spat out a mouthful of blood after a loud bang. He was able to heavily injure a warrior at the completion of the Black Realm with only a gaze. If it was not for the sake of Fire Dragon Commandery Prince Face, Minister Ning could have killed Zhuo Longlin with such gaze.